You're with Julian on the Brown Note and a review of the California-based singer-songwriter Jessica Pratt's latest album, Here in the Pinch. I featured her previous two albums on my radio show, On Your Own Love Again, I think still possibly my favourite, and Quiet Signs. Without being too patronising, she fitted into this quirky bracket of having a very idiosyncratic vocal style, I guess analogous to someone like Joanna Newsom, is the closest I would say. And she stood out, very short albums. I think I saw someone say that this one at 28 minutes and 9 tracks is the same length of tracks and album as the previous one. And often quite slight, but I still play, on my show, I played Strange Melody from the 2015 album, On Your Own Love Again, this year. So I've still carried on listening. She's returned with a slight change up in style. The instrumentation and arrangements on her songs was always a little, well, fitting on her voice was always a bit odd. This is a bigger sound, yet it's also her slightest instrumentation-wise. It starts with it's got a beautiful cover. She looks like the cover shot of her is absolutely wonderful. It's a great cover. The opening track, I've got a track list, has this rumble of drums and this sort of tom-tom, Life Is, the opening track, that reminded me a bit of a Motown sort of vibe. And there's definitely that. There's sort of the elements that really stand out in this album is occasionally it's got this Motown vibe, occasionally it's got this Hal David, Burt Bacharach vibe, but it's also got a lot that could be sort of slightly bossa nova about it as well. And it's got a sway to it, and it's a way of framing her voice away from using words like kooky or idiosyncratic into it sounding more like a mainstream voice. Whether that's a plus or a minus, I still think it's an interesting way to go. And there's also this 60s psychedelic pop feel to a lot of her music, particularly on the opening track, which reminded me of the much lamented UK act Broadcast, who had a collection recently released of their music. The lead singer, I've forgotten her name, but passed away about a decade ago, I think. And they did a really fuller sound of that sort of 60s psych pop. I think the second track, Better Hate's one of her finest. Not every song on the album is as melodically strong, but probably about half of them are. One thing on the lyrics, there seems to be on the surface level this sort of relationship love thing going on, but then it's just really undercut by some very dark lyrics on a lot of the tracks. I'm no longer friends with enemies. I know you'll try and make fun of me. There is some, like, you sort of sit back at times and go, ooh. But that's a really great song. And World on the Strings got a great chorus as well. This is very strong music for people that suffer from anxiety. In that sort of Nick Drake pocket. And in fact, you could probably put her whole, like I often have, like all 3 Nick Drake albums, just on random on a Sunday in the rain, cooking is a wonderful thing for your mental health, and you could probably do the same with all 4 Jessica Pratt albums. But the chorus on that one is really, really good. The music is so bare and minimal, it does become a little bit of a problem. By the sort of midsection of the album, it does make things get a bit samey. Definitely the number one complaint is that every time there's a musical idea, you want it 5 times as much. I really wonder what this album would have sounded like if everything was fuller. And sometimes there'll be a little bit of piano and some drums or tattooing in the background, but it won't last for very long. It will just disappear, and it's mainly like this very simple strum of an acoustic guitar in her voice. And you kind of wish that they just use those same musical ideas all over the songs. It does get a little bit drifty and still in the middle, but it sort of picks up for the last few tracks. I think are really quite strong. Empires Never Know is antigen of the As the Dawn. It's got a Radiohead-esque vibe, like a Radiohead ballad. It's a welcome change up in the musical landscape on the album as well. A definite highlight. And then there's sort of like a palate cleansing instrumental before another of the best tracks on the album, which is The Last Year. It's got... So she uses her own voice in backing vocals here, but not on this track, sorry, but on a lot of the tracks on the album, which is quite interesting. I can't remember if she did that much on her previous releases, but on this track she uses them in close harmony proximity, which gives it a much fuller sound. It's the most Bacharach and David of the songs on the album, and one of the strongest overall. So, nothing. I don't normally review albums after watching a needle drop one. I do agree with his central premise, which is, there's nothing wrong here. Apart from it getting a little bit samey and drifty at times, it's just that you want much more of everything. It's so still and in the background that every time there's a musical idea, it's like you just want to hang on to it for longer and make it louder. I don't agree with him about the number of tracks and the album length, 28 minutes and 9 tracks being a problem. That's not a problem for me at all. You can have an absolutely fantastic album that's that long and that says everything you need to say. I just wish that there was more instrumentation and a fuller sound, at least across, half of the tracks, because it can sort of become almost static. It's that still, but still another beautiful album from her. So I'm going to give Here in the Pitch by Jessica Pratt a 7.5 out of 10.